going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about the perimeter. So we kind of touched on this on our first lesson together. We talked about key terms and what the difference is between area and perimeter. So area, again, is the surface of an object. There's my Prince album again. Love you, Prince. Rest in peace. And the perimeter is what's all the way around. Nothing on the inside, just the measurement of what's around the entire object. So I'd like you to take the notes as you normally do and make sure you include some of these arrows so that you know the perimeter is what's around, not what's the surface. So let's do a couple of example problems. First we'll look at this one, we'll just talk about it. So the perimeter of this one, again, this is considered a unit squared, is what we're working with when we work with one little square unit like that. And to calculate the perimeter around is pretty simple. We are going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 square units around. Again, it's not a square unit, but it's like what represents the unit, right? There's a side of it. So any side that is showing is part of the perimeter. So again, we'll count it. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8. So the perimeter of this one would be 8 units. And we would just put a P, and we know that it's 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, or 2 times 4. Now, this is a problem that is a little bit simpler because we know that all of the sides are the same because it's a square unit. These ones are going to get a little bit tricky. And again, I'm going to put the words units here. Okay, so now I have 2 more shapes and some shapes that you are going to see as you work through some calculations with the perimeter. So what we have here is we have 2 shapes. One is 3 cubes and one is 4 cubes, and they all have different sides. Now, the longer a shape stretches across, the bigger the perimeter is going to be. If it's more condensed, it's going to be smaller. Sometimes a shape that has 3 units could have a bigger perimeter than the shape that has 4 units. We'll take a look at that as we go along. So let's go ahead with this one. A really good trick to do when you're calculating the perimeter of an object is to scratch off each unit as you go by it. So I like to do this. 1, 2, 3. Now again, remember it's every side of the unit that means the perimeter. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 units. So we can either go 1 plus 1 plus 1, but we can actually just say perimeter equals 10 units. Because that's how many times we went around. Like I said before, it's a really beneficial thing to just sort of tick off where you started and where you ended in every single thing you counted, so you don't end up counting the same thing twice or forgetting to count something and then your calculations are off. This one is going to be a little bit tricky. I'm going to pause for a second. Notice how this one is 4 square units and this one is 1, 2, 3, 4 square units, but they both have a different perimeter. Because this one, you know, the block on this one sort of moved down and gave us more space to work with, it ends up being a larger perimeter. And it's a really good idea to kind of experiment with this and see. There is a section on your questions where you are going to be experimenting more with shapes. So now this one's a little bit different. When we take a look at this shape, it's a little bit different. We have 3 units, but they're stacked at their halfway point on each one. So that's going to be a little bit tricky, so that we know that these ones are going to measure not 1, but half. And that's kind of why I put that half symbol there, so that we remember that sometimes it's positioned halfway between a unit. Most of the time as we start to calculate the perimeter, we're going to start calculating it with, you know, just being given dimensions of a figure, saying, you know, this is 4, one end is just 4 and the other end is 4 and it's a square. How much does it measure? But we're going to work with unit square just to get the idea for a little bit. So let's start counting, and I'm going to go around. I'm going to say 1 and a half, 2 and a half. This doesn't mean 2 and a half. I'm just counting and adding up as I go. 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 and a half, 7 and a half, 8, 9, 10. So this one is equal to 10 units. So as you can see, this one only had 3 square units, and this one has 4, but they have the same perimeter. So it really, for perimeter, it really matters how things are placed, how wide they are placed apart, and how condensed they are. So as you can see, this one had the most squares, and because it was so condensely packed together, it ended up having a small perimeter. It would be like that just like in a city. A city could have, you know, a very, very small, tight, enclosed, large number of people and have a higher population, but have a much smaller perimeter than, say, a city like Winnipeg. We are spread out. We have lots of room here. So our perimeter is very spread out. We are considerably a sizable city, but you know, our population's a little bit different. So it's kind of the same here. Imagine these blocks are people, and this block, everyone's really squished together so we can have a smaller perimeter around it, and in these two, everything's really spread out so we have a larger perimeter and less blocks except in this one. So at the end of the video, you are going to see all the lessons, or all the questions that you need to do, and make sure you take all these notes, and when you are done, the time is yours.